My sister-in-law called my niece, Sunshine and Rainbows, for getting an abortion after being assaulted and tried to destroy her scholarship. When my 8-year-old daughter exposed her cruelty at the family reunion, she called CPS on me not knowing we'd discover she'd been stealing from the family for years. My sister-in-law called my niece, Sunshine and Rainbows. You see, my niece was 18 when she was sexually assaulted. When she found out she was pregnant from the attack, she made the difficult decision to terminate. My plan was to get the whole family to support her. But my sister-in-law, Patricia, had other plans. Patricia was the textbook definition of a gold digger who married my brother for the money. Designer bags, country club membership, kids in private school. Some girls get to have all the fun with none of the consequences, she announced at Sunday dinner. What message does this send the younger cousins? I wanted to defend her, but Patricia's father signed my paychecks, so I was forced into being an observer. Over the next few months, Patricia tightened the noose. At every family gathering, she stopped saying Sophie's name out loud, and instead referred to her as Sunshine and Rainbows. She removed her from every family group chat, and convinced almost everyone that she had asked for it, then took the easy way out. It was cruel, but Sophie could handle the gossip. She still had her college scholarship, until Patricia decided to take that too. I was eating breakfast when I got the phone call. It was Sophie. Her breathing was so ragged I thought she was having a panic attack. Patricia just sent an anonymous letter to my school about my moral character and mental instability. They're reviewing my scholarship. Her voice broke. I already paid for housing. If I lose this, I lose everything. I'd spent months watching Patricia destroy Sophie for sport. Watching was over. Now it was my turn to play. The annual family reunion was in 2 weeks at Patricia's house. Perfect. My 8-year-old daughter was going to do my dirty work for me. I spent every night rehearsing with Emma. She understood cruelty better than most adults. When we arrived, Patricia's face went from a fake smile to pure rage. You see, she had specifically requested for Sophie not to come, and now there she was, wearing her college sweatshirt, ready to party. She's not welcome here, Patricia said, her tone cold and unforgiving. Surprise! I yelled at the top of my lungs. It's Sophie's justice ceremony. I shoved past Patricia before she could close the door. 40 relatives turned to stare. Patricia grabbed my arm, nails digging in. Get out or I'll call the police. Emma has prepared something special, I responded, scanning for my daughter. Patricia was already pulling out her phone. I have a presentation, Emma yelled, getting everyone's attention. She connected her iPad to the TV and began in her clear 8-year-old voice. Patty says Sophie is Sunshine and Rainbows because she thinks Sophie wanted something bad to happen to her. But that's a lie. Sophie got hurt by a bad man, and Patty is being mean about it. Patty wrote letters to Sophie's school. Here are the emails from Patty's computer. The screen filled with Patricia's emails planning to destroy Sophie's scholarship, calling her a loose woman who terminated her consequences. Patricia's own husband looked murderous. Sophie's mother gasped. Patricia, you knew she was assaulted? Soon everyone turned to face her, looking for answers. Patricia stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then she fled upstairs, her designer heels clicking on marble. The room erupted. Relatives surrounded Sophie with apologies, offers to pay for school, promises to testify about Patricia's harassment. Sophie's scholarship was saved within days after family members made calls. I was beaming with pride, for both Sophie and Emma. I figured Patricia would just lick her wounds and F off, but 3 days later, CPS knocked on my door at 7 a.m. They'd received a report that I was exposing minors to sexual assault content. They interviewed Emma alone. They photographed her presentation as evidence. They said the investigation would take 30 days minimum, but the real twist came during the investigation. The CPS worker recognized Patricia's name. Turns out Patricia had made false reports about 3 other family members over the years, all after they'd crossed her. She'd been flagged in the system. Now she was under investigation for malicious reporting, and my brother had just found her secret bank account with $200,000 siphoned from his business. The investigation dragged on for weeks. Every morning I woke up wondering if today would be the day they'd take Emma away. Patricia had weaponized the system against me, just like she'd done to others before. But this time, she'd made a critical mistake. My brother showed up at my door unannounced one evening. His face looked haggard, like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. He sat at my kitchen table, staring at his hands while I made coffee. When I set the mug in front of him, he finally spoke. He told me about the bank account. Patricia had been siphoning money from his business for years. Small amounts at first, then larger transfers hidden in legitimate expenses. The $200,000 was just what he'd found so far. His accountant was still digging, but that wasn't why he was here. He pulled out his phone and showed me screenshots of text messages. Patricia had been messaging our relatives, spinning tales about how I'd corrupted Emma, how I was an unfit parent, how Sophie had manipulated everyone at the reunion. She was systematically trying to turn the family against us. The next morning, Patricia's father called me into his office. I'd been expecting this. He sat behind his mahogany desk, not bothering to look up from his papers. When he finally acknowledged me, his expression was cold. He informed me that my position was being eliminated due to restructuring, effective immediately. No severance, no recommendation. Security would escort me out within the hour. I packed my desk in silence, knowing this was Patricia's doing. Her father had always been her enabler. Sophie called me that afternoon, crying again. Someone had spray-painted horrible words on her dorm room door. Campus security said without proof of who did it, they couldn't help. But we both knew Patricia's reach extended far. Emma came home from school unusually quiet that day. When I asked what was wrong, she showed me a note from her teacher. Apparently, some parents had complained about Emma's inappropriate presentation at the reunion. They were concerned about her being exposed to adult content. The school wanted a meeting. I spent that night creating a timeline. Every incident, every threat, every manipulative move Patricia had made over the years. Not just against us, but against anyone who'd crossed her. The pattern was clear. She'd destroy anyone who challenged her perfect image. My cousin Nathaniel called the next day. He'd been one of Patricia's previous CPS targets years ago when he'd refused to lend her money. He still had all the documentation from his case. He offered to share it with my investigator. The CPS worker assigned to my case was thorough. She interviewed teachers, neighbors, Emma's pediatrician. She reviewed Emma's presentation and found it age-appropriate given the circumstances. She also pulled Patricia's history of reports. The pattern was damning. Patricia escalated. She showed up at Emma's school, trying to volunteer for field trips and classroom activities. The principal had to ban her from campus after she cornered Emma during recess, telling her that mommy was going to jail for being a bad parent. My brother filed for divorce the same week. He discovered more hidden accounts, more stolen money. Patricia had been planning her exit for years, stockpiling cash for when their marriage inevitably imploded, but she hadn't expected to be caught. The family group chat exploded with drama. Patricia's supporters dwindled as more relatives came forward with their own stories. She'd borrowed money and never repaid it. She'd spread rumors about cousins' marriages. She'd sabotaged a nephew's job interview because he'd embarrassed her at a party once. Sophie was struggling. The harassment at school continued despite her reports to administration. Someone kept leaving threatening notes under her door. Her grades started slipping. She called me crying almost every night, wondering if she should just drop out. I couldn't let Patricia win, not after everything Sophie had survived. I started documenting everything meticulously. Every text, every email, every incident. I hired a private investigator with my savings to track Patricia's movements. The investigator discovered something interesting. Patricia had been meeting with a lawyer, not for the divorce, but for something else. She was trying to establish grounds for a custody battle, claiming my brother was an unfit parent due to his enabling of my abuse of Emma. Emma overheard me on the phone with the investigator one night. She climbed into my lap and hugged me tight. She told me she wasn't scared, that she knew I was a good mom. Her strength gave me courage to keep fighting. Patricia made her next move at Emma's dance recital. She showed up with a camera, sitting in the front row. When Emma saw her, she froze on stage. Patricia smiled and waved, that fake sweet smile that hid poison underneath. Emma ran off stage in tears. The dance teacher had to physically block Patricia from following Emma backstage. Other parents witnessed the scene. Several offered to write statements about Patricia's harassment. The community was starting to see through her facade. My brother discovered Patricia had been telling his business partners that he was mentally unstable, that the divorce was due to his paranoia about money. She was trying to destroy his professional reputation, just like she'd destroyed mine. The CPS investigation finally concluded. Not only was I cleared, but Patricia was now flagged as a malicious reporter. The investigator recommended charges for false reporting and harassment. It was the first victory in what felt like an endless battle. But Patricia wasn't done. She had one more card to play, and none of us saw it coming. Patricia's final card arrived in the form of a certified letter 2 days after the CPS investigation closed. The envelope contained documents from a family trust I'd never heard of. According to the papers, Patricia's father had established it years ago, naming Patricia as the primary beneficiary and trustee. The trust controlled not just his personal assets, but also held a controlling interest in the family business where I'd worked. The implications hit me immediately. Patricia now had legal authority over significant family finances, including funds earmarked for grandchildren's education. Sophie's college fund, which my parents had contributed to for years, fell under the trust's umbrella. Patricia had already frozen the account. My brother pounded on Patricia's door that evening, demanding answers. She refused to open it, but slipped a note under the door instead. The message was simple: drop the divorce proceedings and she'd release the funds. Continue, and she'd drain every account she could legally touch. Sophie's roommate called me the next morning. Sophie had received an eviction notice from her dorm. The housing payment, which was supposed to come from her college fund, had bounced. The school gave her 72 hours to pay or vacate. Sophie was packing her belongings, trying to figure out where she'd go. I emptied my checking account and drove to Sophie's campus. The housing office accepted my payment, but warned that next semester's fees were already overdue. I watched Sophie unpack her boxes, her hands shaking as she folded clothes back into drawers. She kept apologizing for the trouble she'd caused. Patricia's next move targeted my extended family. My aunt received a letter from Patricia's lawyer claiming she owed the family trust $30,000 for a loan from decades ago. My uncle got a similar notice about a business investment that had supposedly gone bad. None of them had documentation to dispute the claims. The family meeting that weekend was tense. Patricia sat at the head of the table, her lawyer beside her, laying out financial documents. She'd found every informal loan, every handshake deal, every family financial arrangement from the past 30 years. Now she was calling them all due. My cousin Nathaniel slammed his fist on the table when Patricia presented his debt of $15,000. He'd borrowed it for his daughter's medical bills years ago, with the understanding it was forgiven. Patricia produced a document with his signature, though he swore he'd never signed anything. Emma watched from the doorway as adults argued and accused. I tried to send her to her room, but she shook her head. She pulled out her tablet and started taking notes, her small fingers flying across the screen. When I asked what she was doing, she whispered that she was keeping track of everything. Patricia's father finally spoke up, supporting his daughter's actions. He claimed the family had taken advantage of his generosity for too long. The trust was simply protecting what was rightfully theirs. Several relatives stormed out. Others sat in stunned silence. My brother tried reasoning with Patricia privately after the meeting. He offered her a generous divorce settlement if she'd stop attacking the family. She laughed and showed him more documents. She'd been building this case for years, collecting evidence of every family member's financial vulnerability. The harassment at Sophie's school intensified. Her car tires were slashed in the campus parking lot. Her laptop was stolen from the library while she used the bathroom. Security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned during each incident. Sophie started sleeping in different friends' rooms each night, afraid to establish a pattern. I received an eviction noticed the following week. Patricia had discovered my landlord owed money to one of her father's companies. She'd offered to forgive the debt if he'd terminate my lease. With no job and depleted savings, I had 30 days to find a new home for Emma and me. Emma's school situation worsened. Parents whispered at pickup time, moving their children away from her. Birthday party invitations stopped coming. The principal called me in to discuss Emma's concerning behavior of documenting everything on her tablet. They suggested she might benefit from changing schools. My brother's business began hemorrhaging clients. Patricia had contacted each one, hinting at financial instability and questioning his mental state. Major contracts were canceled. Employees started job hunting. He spent his days in damage control mode, trying to salvage what remained of his reputation. Patricia filed custody paperwork for her children, claiming my brother was an unfit parent. She submitted evidence of his erratic behavior and financial irresponsibility. The fact that she'd created these problems didn't matter. The court saw a mother concerned about her children's welfare. Sophie's scholarship review concluded with devastating news. While the committee found no fault with her character, they cited the ongoing family disruption and unstable support system as concerns. They placed her on probation, requiring monthly check-ins and maintaining a perfect GPA. I found Patricia's weakness by accident. While packing my office belongings, I discovered an old flash drive in a drawer. It contained emails from years ago, when Patricia first started dating my brother. She'd been corresponding with multiple men, discussing their net worth and family connections. The emails revealed Patricia's pattern. She'd targeted wealthy men with family businesses, studying their financial structures and family dynamics. My brother was her third attempt. The previous two had discovered her intentions before marriage. One email outlined her exact strategy for infiltrating and controlling family assets. Emma made her own discovery while researching on her tablet. She'd found Patricia's social media accounts from before she met my brother. The posts told a different story than the wealthy background Patricia claimed. Photos showed a modest apartment, complaints about student loans, and desperate posts about needing money. My brother confronted Patricia with the old emails. She didn't deny them. Instead, she reminded him that they were legally married, and her motivations didn't change her current legal rights. She'd won, and they both knew it. The law was on her side. Nathaniel organized a family resistance meeting. 20 relatives gathered in his basement, sharing their stories and pooling resources. We created a spreadsheet of everyone Patricia had targeted, documenting her patterns. The total amount she was trying to extract exceeded $500,000. Patricia responded by accelerating her timeline. She sent formal demand letters to everyone, giving them 30 days to pay. She filed liens against properties, froze bank accounts she could access, and initiated collection proceedings. The family was in financial panic. Sophie attempted to transfer schools to reduce costs, but Patricia had thought of that too. She'd contacted other universities in the state, warning them about Sophie's troubled background and family issues. Sophie's transfer applications were mysteriously rejected or delayed. Emma's documentation proved invaluable. She'd recorded dates, times, and details of every incident. Her tablet contained a comprehensive timeline of Patricia's actions. When the CPS worker visited for a follow-up, Emma presented her findings. The worker took photos of everything. My unemployment benefits were denied. Patricia's father had contested my claim, stating I'd been fired for cause. Without documentation to prove otherwise, I couldn't appeal. Food banks and assistance programs became my new routine as I stretched every dollar. Patricia made a critical error during a family gathering. Emboldened by her success, she bragged about her long-term planning. She mentioned keeping insurance on family members, documenting their mistakes and vulnerabilities for years. She'd been preparing for this moment since joining the family. My brother secretly recorded her confession. Patricia detailed how she'd manipulated situations, created conflicts between family members, and positioned herself as the victim whenever challenged. She laughed about how easy it had been to fool everyone with her country club persona. The recording changed everything. While it might not hold up in court, it galvanized the family. Relatives who'd been neutral chose sides. Those who'd supported Patricia began questioning her motives. The family group chat became a war room for strategizing against her. Sophie received unexpected support from her professors. They'd noticed her struggling and offered independent study options to help maintain her grades. One professor, who'd experienced family financial abuse herself, became Sophie's unofficial mentor and advocate. Patricia's children began acting out at school. Her daughter told a teacher that mommy was being mean to daddy and making everyone sad. Her son started having nightmares about the family breaking apart. The school counselor documented these behavioral changes. I discovered Patricia had been visiting estate sales and pawn shops, selling family heirlooms she'd claimed were lost or donated to charity. My grandmother's pearl necklace, which Patricia had worn to the country club, appeared in an online auction listing. Emma's teacher reached out privately. She'd noticed Emma's distress and wanted to help. She offered to write a statement about Emma's actual behavior versus what was being reported. Other teachers joined her, creating a file of support for Emma's well-being. My brother found evidence of Patricia's earlier schemes. She'd convinced him to sign documents during their honeymoon, claiming they were travel insurance. They were actually power of attorney forms, giving her access to accounts he didn't even know existed. The family lawyer Nathaniel hired made a disturbing discovery. Patricia's father's trust had irregularities in its formation. Several signatures appeared forged, and the notary who'd verified them had lost their license years ago for fraud. The trust's legitimacy was questionable. Patricia sensed the tide turning. She accelerated her cash extraction, liquidating investments and transferring money offshore. My brother watched helplessly as their joint assets disappeared. The divorce court couldn't move fast enough to stop her. Sophie's dorm was vandalized again. This time, security footage caught the perpetrator, a young man Patricia had hired through a temp agency. He confessed immediately when confronted, saying he'd been paid to harass a college student. Patricia had used a fake name, but he identified her from a photo. The temp agency had records of Patricia hiring multiple people for various odd jobs over the months. Following up on these leads revealed a pattern of harassment against family members. She'd been orchestrating incidents while maintaining plausible deniability. Emma's careful documentation revealed something crucial. Patricia had made several mistakes in her financial manipulations, small errors that individually meant nothing but together showed a pattern of fraud. Emma had unknowingly compiled evidence of criminal activity. My cousin discovered Patricia's burner phone during a family barbecue. She'd left it in the bathroom while dealing with her children. The phone contained texts coordinating harassment campaigns, financial transfers, and legal manipulations. We photographed everything before she realized it was missing. Patricia's facade began cracking under pressure. She showed up at my new apartment, pounding on the door at midnight. She screamed about knowing what we were doing, that she'd destroy everyone who stood against her. Neighbors called the police, creating an official record of her harassment. The family's united front had an unexpected effect. Patricia's father began distancing himself from her actions. His business reputation was suffering from the family scandal. Old clients expressed discomfort with the situation. He quietly suggested Patricia might want to compromise. My brother's forensic accountant uncovered the full extent of Patricia's theft. She'd stolen not just the $200,000 initially discovered, but closer to $400,000 over the years. The money trail led through multiple accounts and shell companies she'd created. Sophie's college administration finally took notice of the harassment pattern. The dean of students launched an investigation into the systematic targeting of a student. The young man's confession led to concrete evidence of Patricia's involvement in campus incidents. Emma's school reversed their stance when presented with the evidence we'd gathered. The principal apologized for not seeing the situation clearly. Emma's teacher created a support plan to help her process the family trauma while maintaining her academic progress. Patricia's lawyer withdrew from her case, citing irreconcilable differences in legal strategy. Word spread that he'd discovered she'd lied to him about key facts. Without legal representation, Patricia's carefully constructed plans began unraveling. The trust investigation revealed what we'd suspected. Patricia's father had never intended to disinherit family members or create the restrictive trust Patricia claimed existed. She'd manipulated documents and forged addendums after gaining access to his files. My unemployment appeal succeeded when former co-workers testified about the real reason for my termination. They'd been afraid to speak up initially, but Patricia's overreach had emboldened them. Back pay and benefits were approved, providing desperately needed financial relief. Patricia's children spent more time with my brother as her behavior became increasingly erratic. They told him about mommy's secret meetings and how she'd practiced conversations in the mirror. Their innocent observations provided insights into Patricia's planning methods. The family's collective documentation painted a clear picture of Patricia's systematic abuse. We had financial records, harassment evidence, forged documents, and witness testimonies. The pile of evidence grew daily as more relatives contributed their experiences. Sophie's mentor professor helped her apply for emergency scholarships. The applications detailed the family financial abuse she'd endured. Multiple organizations responded with support, recognizing her resilience in the face of targeted harassment. Patricia made one last desperate attempt to regain control. She called a family meeting, promising to drop all financial claims if everyone would sign non-disclosure agreements about the past months. She wanted to bury the evidence and start fresh. The meeting was her final mistake. She'd underestimated the family's resolve and overestimated her remaining influence. When she walked into Nathaniel's house, she found not just family, but also a forensic accountant, a family lawyer, and documentation of every crime she'd committed. My brother presented her with two options. She could voluntarily return the stolen money, drop all false claims, and leave the family peacefully, or they would pursue criminal charges with the mountain of evidence they'd compiled. The choice was hers. Patricia's rage was volcanic. She threatened to destroy everyone, to take the children and disappear, to burn down their lives. But faced with the united family and documented evidence of her crimes, her threats rang hollow. She had no cards left to play. Patricia stood in Nathaniel's living room, surrounded by 40 family members and mounting evidence of her crimes. Her designer heels clicked nervously on the hardwood floor as she scanned the room for allies. She found none. My brother stepped forward with the forensic accountant's report. Patricia's eyes darted to the stack of documents on the coffee table. Bank statements, forged signatures, fraudulent trust documents. Years of meticulous planning laid bare. She lunged for the papers, but Nathaniel blocked her path. Patricia stumbled backward, her perfect composure finally cracking. She grabbed her phone and started making calls, pacing frantically. No one answered. Her lawyer had already withdrawn. Her father wasn't picking up. Emma sat quietly in the corner, her tablet recording everything. She'd learned to document silently, capturing Patricia's unraveling without drawing attention. Sophie stood beside her, protective hand on Emma's shoulder. Patricia's children arrived with their nanny. My brother had arranged for them to be there, knowing Patricia would have to choose between fleeing and abandoning her kids. She froze when she saw them, her escape plan crumbling. The forensic accountant presented his findings methodically. $400,000 stolen over 8 years. Shell companies, fraudulent expenses, forged signatures. Patricia's face went pale as each scheme was exposed. My cousin produced the photos from Patricia's burner phone. Text messages coordinating harassment, payments to temp agency workers, instructions for vandalizing Sophie's dorm. Patricia tried to claim the phone wasn't hers, but her fingerprints were all over it. Patricia's father finally arrived, summoned by Nathaniel. He walked in expecting to defend his daughter. Instead, he found evidence that Patricia had forged his signature on trust documents. His face darkened as he reviewed the papers. The family lawyer explained Patricia's options clearly. Return the stolen money, drop all false claims, sign a confession, or face criminal prosecution with overwhelming evidence. The choice was simple. The consequences were not. Patricia turned to her father brother for support. He stepped away from her, shaking his head. His business reputation was already suffering. He couldn't afford to be implicated in her crimes. She was on her own. Sophie's professor arrived with documentation of the harassment campaign. The temp workers signed confession, security footage from campus, academic records showing the impact on Sophie's education. The evidence was undeniable. Patricia made one last desperate play. She threatened to expose family secrets, to drag everyone through public scandal. But the family had already decided. They'd rather face temporary embarrassment than let Patricia continue her reign of terror. My brother presented divorce papers. Patricia's hands shook as she read them. She'd lose everything she'd stolen, plus face potential criminal charges. Her country club lifestyle was over. The designer bags and private school tuition would disappear. Emma showed her tablet to the forensic accountant. Her documentation included details Patricia had forgotten. Small transactions, minor forgeries, patterns of behavior spanning years. An 8-year-old had built a better case than professional investigators. Patricia's children clung to their nanny, confused and scared. They'd witnessed too much chaos, too many angry confrontations. My brother knelt beside them, promising things would get better soon. Patricia watched, realizing she was losing them too. The room fell silent as Patricia considered her options. Fight and lose everything, including her freedom, or cooperate and salvage what little remained. Her father's abandonment had stripped away her last protection. She signed the confession with a trembling hand. Each page documented another crime, another victim, another betrayal. The family watched in grim satisfaction as she acknowledged what she'd done. The stolen money would be returned through liquidating Patricia's assets. Her designer goods, jewelry, country club membership, everything she'd built on lies would be sold to repay her victims. The process would take months, but justice would be served. Sophie would receive full restitution for her educational expenses and harassment damages. The family established a fund to ensure she could complete her degree without financial worry. Patricia's attempts to destroy her future had failed. My unemployment benefits were reinstated with back pay. Patricia's father, eager to distance himself from scandal, offered a generous settlement for wrongful termination. I accepted, knowing it was the best outcome possible. Emma's school issued a formal apology. The principal acknowledged they'd been manipulated by Patricia's lies. Emma's teacher created a special recognition for her bravery in documenting abuse. My daughter had become an unexpected hero. Patricia's father discovered the full extent of her deceptions. She'd been stealing from his company too, smaller amounts he'd never noticed. His trust in her had blinded him to years of embezzlement. He cut all financial ties immediately. The family began healing from Patricia's systematic abuse. Cousins reconnected, apologies were exchanged, trust slowly rebuilt. The shared trauma had ultimately brought them closer together. Patricia had united them in ways she never intended. My brother gained full custody of the children. Patricia's erratic behavior and financial crimes made her an unfit parent. She would have supervised visitation only, pending completion of court-ordered therapy and restitution payments. Patricia moved back to her childhood apartment, the one from her old social media posts. No designer bags, no country club lunches, no wealthy husband to manipulate. She'd returned to the life she'd desperately tried to escape. Sophie returned to campus with renewed confidence. The harassment stopped immediately after Patricia's confession. Her professors rallied around her, ensuring she had every resource needed to succeed. Her grades rebounded quickly. Emma processed the experience through art therapy at school. She drew pictures of family members standing together, protecting each other. Her documentation skills were channeled into a school journalism project. She'd found positive outlets for her vigilance. The divorce finalized quickly with Patricia's signed confession. She received nothing beyond basic support payments. The prenuptial agreement she'd fought against years earlier now protected my brother's remaining assets from her reach. Nathaniel organized monthly family dinners to rebuild connections. Patricia was notably absent, but her children attended with my brother. Slowly, the family dynamic normalized without her toxic presence. Healing happened one meal at a time. Patricia's victims received their restitution payments as her assets were liquidated. The country club membership alone covered several debts. Her designer goods auction raised thousands more. Every payment was documented, every victim made whole. Sophie graduated with honors 2 years later. The family attended in force, celebrating her resilience. Patricia's attempts to destroy her had only made her stronger. She'd proven that cruelty couldn't break her spirit. Emma grew into a thoughtful teenager who understood the importance of standing up to bullies. Her experience with Patricia had taught her valuable lessons about documentation, evidence, and protecting those you love. She channeled these skills into student advocacy. My brother rebuilt his business slowly. Some clients returned after learning the truth about Patricia's lies. Others were replaced by new connections who respected his integrity. He learned to trust again, cautiously but genuinely. Patricia completed her court-ordered restitution after 3 years of working multiple jobs. She lived quietly in her apartment, avoided family gatherings, and slowly paid back every dollar she'd stolen. Her children visited monthly, supervised by their father. The family trust was properly restructured with legitimate documentation. Patricia's father appointed an independent trustee to prevent future abuse. Every transaction required multiple signatures and regular audits. The safeguards Patricia had exploited were permanently closed. Sophie became a counselor specializing in family trauma. Her experience with Patricia inspired her career choice. She helped other young people navigate family abuse and educational disruption. Patricia's cruelty had inadvertently created a healer. Emma kept her tablet with all the documentation. It served as a reminder that standing up to bullies requires patience, evidence, and courage. She never needed to use those skills again, but she was ready if necessary. The extended family learned valuable lessons about trust and verification. Handshake deals were replaced with proper documentation. Family loans included written terms. Patricia had taught them the importance of protecting themselves themselves while maintaining family bonds. My new job provided stability and growth opportunities. Without Patricia's father's influence, I advanced based on merit. The wrongful termination settlement had given me breathing room to find the right position. Career satisfaction replaced mere survival. Patricia attempted to reconnect with the family after completing restitution. Her request was politely declined. Forgiveness didn't require renewed relationship. The family had moved forward without her. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Sophie met someone special during graduate school. At their wedding, the family celebrated not just their union, but Sophie's complete triumph over Patricia's attempts to derail her life. Love had conquered cruelty. Emma started college herself, choosing to study law with a focus on family advocacy. Her childhood experience documenting Patricia's abuse had shown her the power of evidence in protecting victims. She carried those lessons forward. My brother found happiness in single fatherhood. His children thrived in the stable environment, free from their mother's manipulation. He dated occasionally, but prioritized healing and parenting over rushing into new relationships. Patricia aged alone in her apartment, working retail to make ends meet. Her schemes had cost her everything she'd valued: wealth, status, family. The gold digger had discovered that stolen treasure always gets reclaimed. Years passed peacefully. Family gatherings were warm, supportive, genuinely caring. Patricia's absence was barely noticed anymore. She'd become a cautionary tale told to younger cousins about the importance of integrity and the consequences of greed. Sophie established a scholarship fund for assault survivors facing educational disruption. Patricia's attempts to destroy her education had inspired her to help others in similar situations. Good had emerged from evil's intentions. Emma graduated law school with a focus on family law and victim advocacy. Her thesis on documentation in abuse cases cited her childhood experience. She dedicated her career to helping families protect themselves from predators like Patricia. The family business thrived under new management after Patricia's father retired in shame. Ethical practices replaced the corruption Patricia had exploited. His complicity in her schemes had finally caught up with him. My brother's children grew up knowing their mother's crimes, but not defined by them. They chose their own paths, supported by extended family who'd learned the importance of protecting the innocent. Patricia's toxic legacy ended with her. I found peace in ordinary life: work, family dinners, school events, quiet evenings at home. Patricia had tried to destroy this simple happiness. She'd failed. Sometimes the greatest triumph is simply continuing to live well. The family's story became one of resilience, not victimization. Patricia had united them in shared purpose. Her cruelty had revealed their strength. Her greed had taught them generosity. Her hatred had fostered their love. In the end, Patricia got exactly what she'd always wanted: money and solitude. She sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by her minimum wage life, while the family she'd terrorized thrived without her. The gold digger had found fool's gold. Sophie, Emma, and I stood together at Emma's law school graduation. 3 generations of women who'd refused to be broken by one person's cruelty. Patricia had tried to destroy us all. Instead, she'd forged us into something unbreakable. Life continued, beautifully ordinary, blessedly Patricia free.